Pick up your gear and open your chests. Throw on your armor and head out on a quest. Hey, hey, it's a brand new day. On the Sword Coast, your allies will help with blades and bows and magic as well. Hey, hey, heroes on their way. Fighting forever against overwhelming odds. Fighting together in favor of multiple gods. Idle champions of the forgotten realms. Idle champions, adventure never ends. Idle champions, hit you while I'm there. Idle champions, you will say it again. Idle champions. From Waterdeep to Icewind, head out to Shelf or Shadowfell, hey, hey. Together we stay. Walk to the monsters, walk to the boss, walk to the right, it's never a loss, hey, hey. Bad guys to slay. Fighting forever against overwhelming odds. Fighting together in favor of multiple gods. Idle champions of the forgotten realms. Idle champions, adventure never ends. Idle champions, hit you while I'm there. Idle champions, you will say it again. Idle champions.
Hey folks, it's that time again. It's time for more Idle Champions of the Forgotten Realms. You know, that song that was just going on. From Jason Charles Miller, Bardic Inspiration. I am Gaarawarr. Today, we are doing Gaarawarr's Guide to Tanking. That's right. We're going to talk about tanking just kind of as a general overall concept in this game, and kind of what defines tanks and what makes good tanks. So we are kind of stepping back into, I guess you could say it like this is what I would consider a very new player topic. You know, some of the shenaniganry that goes on with tanks may have been overlooked by some, but you know, we're gonna get into some of that. We're not necessarily gonna go over like every tank in the game. This is more of a, well, as my new guide that just appeared this morning on the subreddit says, it's Tanking 101 an introduction. So this isn't a comprehensive review of every tank in the game and how they work. This is what is tanking and why should I tanking? Why should I tanking? Yeah. All right. So we're gonna dive in. We're gonna hop into like this kind of formation. I think everyone's kind of used to. This one has 3, and this one has 3. We're gonna do this one just because I'm still trying to get my Solis chests, but we're gonna use this multi-tank align formation to talk tankage. Let me put something out there. There we go. Now I've got a clear screen. And if you got the code today and you want to know how do I code? How do I tank? How do I code? Open the shop. Click the unlock a checks button, however you do that. Copy paste the code in or type it in. You can type in the cryptex. This is called the cryptex. You know, at least if you're in PCs. If you're on consoles or mobile, I'm sorry. It's a little rougher there. Grab your Electrum chest. And I guess housekeeping, because I see questions coming in already. If you haven't been to a Saturday show before, welcome. But on this show, the first hour-ish is me doing exposition. I'm just going to talk. I'm going to talk on this topic. I'm going to go over it. I'm going to try to cover everything in my notes. Usually I'm talking off the top of my head, but today we've got lots of notes. So I don't want to miss anything because it's important. And then in the second half of the show, so after we take our musical break, then I'll get to all the questions. So if you do have questions, you can throw them in the chat. We have the wonderful Jay here today, pulling questions. I've got a little document up here, and I can see all the questions. So when I get there, I'll be able to ask them. But just know you only have to type them once. I will get to them towards the end of the show. All right. So we're going to talk about tanks. A lot of people lately. One of the reasons that we're diving into this is we have lots of new players lately, and especially from about a month or so ago when the Epic Game Store had a promotion, and they gave everybody Spurt. Over here in slot 3, and normally, I didn't close my other groups, folks. That gem farm life. Normally, like Spurt is in slot 3 with Nieli. Normally, when you start the game, you aren't given lots of free champions. So you have the normal core champions, and like the first 3 are Brunor and Celeste and Nieli. And Brunor's durable. He's not tanky. He's durable. But Nieli is the tank. Nieli is actually your first tank. Well, and then you don't get another tank option until you get to Turial, basically, who has a tank spec. Well, so does Nieli, technically. But both of them can be tanks. The other champions you start the game with, nope. So when they released the Epic Games promotion and they gave everybody Spurt, people threw Spurt in and they were like, all right, I'm gonna use Spurt because he's got this great gear. He makes my damage numbers go up. So why wouldn't I use him? But then they didn't have a tank. Then it was just enemies running smash into the head of whoever was at the front of the formation. When they didn't have enough damage to actually kill anything. That's less than ideal progression, folks. We're going to talk about why, now that I've finally got everything back to normal. Are we good? Yes. Okay. So normally Nieli is our first tank, and we're going to bring her out here. And we're going to talk about Nieli. Because I'm feeling personally attacked by this description of the new Epic player right now. No, this is not... Hey, look. For the last... Wow, we're coming real close to 4 years that we've been... some of us have been playing this game, folks. So for the last almost 4 years now, I think the general overall feeling in the community, or at least one that I've tried to foster, is don't hate, educate, right? Like, we're not here to hate on you for doing things. We all, oh my gosh, I made so many mistakes when I first started out, right? Like, this is all about just learning how to understand everything and kind of lift you up, stand on our shoulders so that you can do amazing things in the game without having to make all the mistakes that we made. So here we go. I'm going to go through. Here's like the first 3 champions, right? So what's the difference between them? Like Brunor here, you'll see support roll, overwhelm 5. These are important numbers. Shield dwarf. He's got a shield. He can tank, right? Health currently 147. We look at Celeste, health 65, right? Again, healing support, overwhelm 5. Yeah, we'll get to that in a moment. But the health numbers are really kind of what you're looking at, right? Like, so first off, we see 65. Well, and then we see 147. Well, that's nice. But then we get 7,000. Well, this is not normal, folks. She has, and we'll talk about this, she has an item that increases her health. That wasn't there on the other champions. They also say tanking in their roles. Yeah, tanking support. Overwhelm 20. Like, these numbers are different. Like, what do they all mean? That's kind of what we're going to go over about. But, like, so right now we're looking, hey, look at all the health. Well, right away we know, well, that means they're going to be able to take a lot more of those punches from the enemies than everybody else. This is the purpose of a tank. You have someone up here that has lots of health. Conversely, if we bring in our friend Spurt, who, if you watched the Campaign 2 wrap-up, for Critical Role recently. Made an appearance partway ththrough the Campaign 2 wrap-up. It was hilarious. And very fitting. Look, Spurt, 53 HP, folks. Support Overwhelm 5, 53. So if you were trying to tank with Spurt, and you were getting to the point where, I can't kill everything right away, and then they just falls over. Now you know why. Like, Spurt has no health. Celeste is a better tank. Brunner, definitely better tank. But Nayeli, much better tank, right? So when you're looking for who you're going to put in this front line of your formation, front line being generally considered, this is generally considered the tank column, but I would say it's it's better described as the front line, because technically the tanks don't have to always be here, but this is the exception game. Idle Champion is a game full of exceptions, and in tanking, there's exceptions to tanking. We'll talk about those. So when you're deciding on who you're going to put here, up in this front column, generally speaking, you're going to want someone who has this tanking role. Okay. If they don't have this tanking role, they're not necessarily going to have lots of health. We did see Brunner had some decent health, but they're not necessarily going to have lots of health. So you want to keep that in mind. What we want is lots of health, just in general, so that you can take lots of punches to the face. That's going to help you stay on longer. That's kind of one of the first things that you get from a tank is just health to be able to get smacked in the face and not fall down and go boom real fast, right? Other things you're looking for is their overwhelm number. If we hover over this, the champion becomes overwhelmed when they are being attacked by 20 or more enemies at once. An overwhelmed champion takes more damage from all enemies based on the number of enemies attacking them. So this is a tanking feature, is overwhelm. Normal champions you're going to see have a 5 overwhelm, right? That's usually what, if it's not a tank champion, it's probably 5 overwhelm, with some exceptions. So that means if we get over 5 champions on Brunner or Spurt, they start taking more damage. How much more damage? About 10% per enemy, if I remember the math. So that means if you were tanking with Spurt, and somehow survived to have 15 champions beating on Spurt, you would be taking 100% more damage every time they attacked, right? So it's an additive thing. 10% for every enemy above that. So that means you can get up to 20 enemies on Nayeli before she starts taking punishing damage, or what's supposed to be punishing damage. This is one of the numbers you want to look for. Usually you'll see tanks start around 15-ish, and then the number that they get to, a number that they have and or get to varies, depending on the tank. And sometimes there'll be some other features that modify that. But we'll get there. So one of the other features of tanks is as you upgrade them. Here, let's look at Brunner. I'm going to throw lots of health into Brunner. I'm going to give him. It doesn't really matter. I'm just going to give him lots of upgrades. We're going to throw him way up here. In fact, he's almost soft cap now. Still 147 health. I'm so far leveled up now. Still 147 health. If you are not a tanking champion, you're not getting health when you upgrade. You're not getting health. You're getting all kinds of other goodies that are fitting your role in the formation, but you're not getting health, right? Whereas if we look at Nayeli, I want to say the first one is it. Ooh, yeah, we should probably talk about this. First one's technically there. If we look at the upgrades, all kinds of upgrades, but then we get to 100 with the specialization choices. One of her specialization choices, Oath of Devotion, says she gets increased health. The other one says she increases one of her buffs. And and a lot of people go this way. They're like, ooh, more damage. More damage. Give me 100% more damage. If you're actually tanking with Nayeli, you want the 70 health. What this doesn't tell you, it says Nayeli focuses on tanking enemies, increasing her own survivability, keeping her foes from attacking her friends. This includes more than just 70 health over time. this specialization is her support specialization. This is her tanking specialization. So you're going to want to go Oath of Devotion. It's going to increase her health automatically just by 70, which, you know, now we're well over. We've got so much health now. Because of the item. Again, they're going to have a health item that other champions aren't going to have. But now, as we level up, you will see she gets health increases. So you increase the health by 125 at 130. So she'll get these little, plus sign upgrades. This is going to increase her health, and you're going to keep getting that increased health all the way through. And I think right now her soft cap is her final upgrade is more health. As you can see, now we're up to EO5 health. So tanks are going to be able to scale as you progress with their health and thus take more damage, allowing you to push further because the enemies are going to upgrade. The enemies do more damage every time you run through the storyline portion of adventure. So every 50 levels, and then you rotate and those levels repeat. The damage goes up. So as you're moving through levels and progressing, you are getting to areas where you're taking more and more damage. So every 50 areas that cycles, and you need to be able to upgrade your tanks along that way, their health and survivability, as you progress. So putting in these other squishier champions, not going to help you a whole lot. You want to make sure you have a tank in the front line to be able to do that. So along with health upgrades, one of the things that, like health upgrades specifically, first off, help themselves stay alive. But they also help the rest of your party stay alive. Because when you reach a certain point, every champion gets, a tank champion should get an ability that shares their health. The name is different for each champion. It'll be something specific to them. For Nayeli, it's Aura of Heroism. It is only available in her Devotion specialization. So you have to be in her tanking spec to get a lot of the increased health, but also specifically to get Aura of Heroism. In Vengeance spec, she does get some health upgrades. However, it's a noticeable difference. It's noticeably lower in Vengeance spec than in Heroism spec. So if you want to give her actual survivability, you want to go Devotion spec. You want to get Aura of Heroism, or these abilities increase the health of all champions in the formation by 25% of Nayeli's max health. Now, this percentage can vary depending on the champion. 25% tends to be normal, what I would call normal, but some are lower. It can be different. Depending on what that champion's kind of focus is and how they work. So just know that you're looking for, in a tank, you're looking for a champion that shares health. Why is this important? Well, now we go over to Brunor. Look at that. He's up to EO5 health now too. And so is Celeste, right? I mean, Nayeli's still your tank. Nayeli's still going to be your tank, but you've now made the rest of your party more durable. So when you fight bosses that like to AoE your entire party, like say, the dragon that we're currently fighting in Dragon Down. Having multiple tanks means when that dragon does its breath weapon and hits your entire party, all the squishies don't just fall over instantly, right? You've now increased their survivability and their durability, so that your party as a whole is tankier. This is not a feature you get in squishy champs, in other champs. You only get this in tank champs. In terms of increased health and it being shared with the rest of the party. So let's hop back now again. Oh, hey, speaking of that dragon, right? See, everybody else is taking damage. Obviously Nayeli is too, but it's not as bad because otherwise they would have died instantly if we didn't have Nayeli. Like if we hop back, if we take Nayeli out, now we're back to normal damage, right? Now we're back to our normal health. Now the first kind of AoE that we get, well, that one was the stun. Of course it was. Thanks, dragon. I'm trying to demonstrate something here. Can you just do the damage AoE to my party, please? That'd be great. There we go. Now I'm taking more chunks of damage instead of just single attacks and stuns. And eventually they're just gonna all go away. They're just gonna all go away. So having the extra health is going to be super useful there. I recommend it. If we hop back here, overwhelm. We talked about the overwhelm a bit. One of the things to keep in mind is overwhelm can be adjusted in some situations. Another thing that you're going to get with tanking champions, so if they have the role of tanking, is you're going to get health feats, potentially a 15%, potentially 30%. Those are usually the ones we see. Nayeli has one down here for 50,000 gems that's 60%, which is wild. You don't see this that often. But they're also going to get overwhelm feats. So there's one that increases the number by 5, defensive duelist, and there's one that can increase it by 10, so calm under pressure. You can mix these, or I mean, you could, if you have to kind of figure out what's killing you. Are you dying because you don't have enough health, like you're not even getting to the overwhelm point and they're beating you down because you don't have enough health? Or do you have plenty of health, but suddenly you're getting so many things on the screen that you're just taking way too much damage? And then you might swap in over something to increase your overwhelm. These are generally only seen on tanking champions. Exception to the rule, Tutorial Dwarf, Brunor. Brunor has a defensive duelist. Brunor can get up to 10 overwhelm. It's not a lot. Clearly, 10. It's not even to the baseline of Nayeli. But this is one of those exceptions. Brunor is kind of what you would refer to as a non-tank tank. So he's like a bruiser. He started off, we saw from the beginning, he started off with a little more health than Celeste did, because Celeste is a squishy, especially more than Spurt had. This is because in a pinch, specifically like when you start the game off, in a pinch, when you're new, you can sub him in as a tank. You lose a lot of the other features of Brunor if you do that, but that's something you have to keep in mind when you're trying to do this, because Brunor buffs in his same column. You're not usually buffing your tanks. So keep in mind, while he can tank, it doesn't necessarily mean he should tank. Yeah, that's a big deal. We will touch on that when we get into more of the exceptions. Some tanks, we're going to bring in a more recent addition to the game. Briv Steel Marrow. Some tanks offer not only health upgrades. Look at Briv starts strong. He's got a 30 overwhelm. He gets lots of health. He has increased health feats. He can get his overwhelm up to 40, 45 technically if you just went full overwhelm. I don't know that I would. But you do you. So he has all of the features of a tank, but one of the things that he has in his abilities that is different, he has a couple things we're going to talk about, but the main one that we're focusing on here is his Steel Bones ability. When he comes under attack, metal shoots out of his pores and covers him in strong armor. While armored, Briv takes 10% less damage. And some other stuff that's important. But this is just flat damage reduction. There are two kinds of damage reduction in the game. This is a percent damage reduction, I should say. But I mean, but then there's a numerical damage reduction. And we're going to bring Turial in his unicorn form. Turial's specialization allows him to become a tank, Wild Shape. It grants him extra health and increases his overwhelm points. So Turial goes from a 5 overwhelm to a 25 when he goes into Wild Shape. But what we want to talk about is Wild Resilience. This reduces the damage taken by Turial by 8.5. It starts off at like 5. It goes up as you upgrade. Cannot reduce to below 25% of the initial damage. So Turial removes a flat amount of a hit, whereas Briv removes a percentage. So if you're getting hit for 10 points of damage early on, Briv's only going to reduce that by 1 because his is 10%. Turial's going to reduce it by 8.5. So early on, Turial, that kind of flat straight number percent is great. However, Briv scales better over time. So later on, when you're getting hit by 1,000,000, you know, Briv's going to reduce 100,000 of that, while Turial's going to be like, I blocked 8.5, and you know, that's not great, right? Well, yeah, it's a percentage. It's a percentage. So Turial would block, yeah. Sorry, Ninjury. Because of the 25% cap, I should have used a higher number. Because of the 25% cap, let's say he was going to take 100 damage. You know, you would cap out at 25%. But the point is early on it's stronger than early on. It's going to be a little stronger than later on. Ultimately, what you like is percent damage reductions. I believe there are a couple of those. Turial was again one of the first champions ever put in the game. They gave him flat damage reduction. It kind of came at a time when the game was different in terms of tanking. There was a major shielding, healing, and tanking upgrade that happened in the before times. That kind of changed how tanks existed in the game and what their point was. Tanks are meant to keep your formation alive, but only for so long. They are truly the limiting factor of how far you're going to push. It's not really your DPS. I mean, there's a combination of DPS, but back in the before times, you would push real far, you'd run out of DPS, but your tanks, between their health scaling and the crazy amount of heals, the wild heals that they got, and then the shields that they would get, they just wouldn't die. They just wouldn't die at all. And you get stuck on levels where you weren't able to kill anything because you didn't have any damage. But they weren't able to kill you, which meant you were just sitting on a level potentially AFK for hours and getting nothing for your time. So they changed the game so that your tanks actually die. Your tanks die because it's better if your tanks die in this type of game, because if they die, that means you fall back naturally to a level, and you'll keep falling back naturally to a level until they stay alive and you're killing things, and thus you're making some gold, because some gold's better than no gold. So in terms of damage reduction is another way you can make your tanks survivable. There are a couple different flavors of that, so either flat number reduction or percent reduction. Keep that in mind. That is going to help you stay alive. One of the other things that's going to help you stay alive is shields. Some tanks have self-shielding capabilities. We have Turial out here because he is one of those tanks. I think I want to do this. So Turial is one of those tanks that can self-shield. Turial's self-shield is based off his ultimate. So let me get some heals out here for a moment. When Turial pops his ultimate while in wild shape, based on the number of enemies he hits, he gets a shield. And the shield value, will vary. Did I even hit an enemy? It didn't even hit an enemy because we're killing everything instantly. We'll let that cool down and come back, and then we'll do it on the boss level. Self-shields are, in my opinion, they're more important than healing. We'll talk about healing in a moment. We can see the heals coming off of Celeste here. So I guess we can talk about healing real quick. Healing is kind of a stopgap measure to kind of help you stay alive a little longer. Now, early on, when you're in your lower levels, it's actually pretty solid. You can, with decent healing, you can keep your tanks alive. And your party alive in some cases against AoE damage. However, eventually, because of the way the game was redesigned, you are supposed to die. Your formation is supposed to die. That's how you know you've gone further than they have balanced the game for you to go. So healing's only going to do so much. Healing will be helpful, but it's more of a delay measure. And eventually you're going to take so much damage that you fall over. Because eventually, especially against some, bosses, you're going to take more damage in one hit from a boss at some point than you have health. So healing is kind of pointless there, which is where shields come in. So temp HP shields are things that get placed over your character's health on top of their regular hit points. So if we hop into this boss level, and I ult immediately, we will see that Turial now has this big shield. that's way, way up, basically doubled his health, which means he can get hit for twice as much as normal in one hit if necessary, but also just over time. And that's a big deal. That's a big deal. So having those self-shielding mechanics can actually make you, in the current version of the game, incredibly strong. And generally speaking, the kind of top tanks in the game, right, Turial and Ayla, have self-shield capabilities, and that's what makes them top tanks. They can basically reapply their shields fairly regularly. We're dying because I don't have a DPS. I should probably do that. I don't know that it's completely necessary. But having that capability to protect yourself from damage goes a long way. Goes a long way. Now, some tanks, I think Briv may be the only one, but some tanks have all the toys. Briv has damage reduction, he has lots of health, he has got an enormous overwhelm number, and he has his own self-healing mechanic. But it's not just self-healing. He'll heal your whole party with you. Briv is a very strong tank for, I think, kind of early to mid-game. But because he doesn't have any kind of self-shielding mechanic, he's going to end up, ultimately at the end of the higher end levels, he's going to get surpassed by people who can self-shield. Because the way Briv heals is he takes... he basically heals for 1% of the damage he takes. This is kind of a delayed form of damage reduction, and that's kind of a good way to think about healing. You're extending your ability to survive by effectively reducing this damage if you can live long enough for the heal to come off. So Briv is, again, this kind of front line here. You've got a starter tank, you've got kind of a mid-level tank, you've got an in-game tank. For different reasons, right? Like you've got lots of health, decent overwhelm, and health share. With Briv, you've got lots of health, you've got a lot of overwhelm, you've got health share, and you've got healing, and it can heal his whole party. And with Turial, you've got a good overwhelm, you've got a lot of health, and you've got self-shielding, right? These are the different kinds of tanks. But we're going to see, as they add more and more tanks, that we're going to see, different features. We just saw a tank that was added recently in Solis with this event. And Solis has a lot of interesting features. One of those is the ability to just kind of stop all range damage via like a deflect missile, like a reflective shield type of mechanic. That can be super helpful. So as they add tanks to the game, they're going to kind of provide them somewhat different abilities. They still have to do some of these basics, right? Like they still have to have health. They still have to hopefully share that health with everybody else. And they have to give you some kind of like an overwhelm feature. And the best tanks though, are going to have, like ramping bonuses. So they're going to buff your party. This is why usually you're going to see a tank that says tanking support. There's an exception to that rule. We'll talk about him in a moment. But usually you're going to see tanking and support. Well, what is the support part? Well, the support part is that they provide buffs to everyone else in the formation. There could be limiting ranges to that, like Nayeli has her Aura of Courage, increases the damage of champions in the column behind her by an amount. So right now that's just increasing the damage of Celeste. So Nayeli isn't a great option here. In terms of, because you're not getting Aura of Courage. However, you are getting Aura of Protection, which increases damage of all champions for each enemy attacking Nayeli and or each enemy in rage stack. This Aura of Protection is kind of unique to tanks for the most part. Aura of Courage is something, sure, this is a regular buffing ability. We'll see things like this on all kinds of champions. But Aura of Protection, where you're increasing damage based off be the number of enemies you're tanking. This is a tank bonus. This is a ramping tank bonus. And usually you want to see something like this. Because you want something that increases your damage as the difficulty of the area you're in increases. So basically, as you push further and further into the game, you're going to stop one-shotting mobs. You're going to stop, killing them after a couple hits, and they're going to start building up on your tank. Well, as they start building up on your tank, they are buffing. That tank should be buffing your damage based off the number of those enemies. And as long as your tank is survivable enough, so they've got the health, they've got the overwhelm, they've got some other kind of survivability features going on, you will start getting enough damage to start killing all those creatures that are stacking up. And eventually you'll hit that magic threshold where the buff is big enough that your DPS then just wipes out the whole field. This is a key part of what I consider good tanking champions. So tanks that are there to help out your party and help you succeed should have some kind of ramping bonus. Now, the key here is each enemy attacking Nayeli and or each enemy in rage stacks. Generally speaking, you're only going to see enrage stacks on bosses. That's where most people see enrage stacks. And what that means is basically the enrage meter comes up and it tells you a number. Consider that number additional enemies attacking your champion, and thus multiplying against whatever the buff is. You can enrage against regular enemies. There is a limit to the number of what I call trash mobs that come onto a screen. So on an enemy like this that is a non-boss, or on a level like this it's a non-boss level, the maximum number of enemies that can be on a screen at once is 100. Then they stop spawning. Once they do that, they start enraging. So you can use that enrage mechanic on regular levels. It can also be done on boss levels. Now, on this specific one, this is why I kind of chose this formation. We have this wild 3-tank frontline. I say 3-tank frontline. It's a 3-champion column, and it's in the front, right? But you want to ideally use 3 tanks in this column because you are only going to get as far as your weakest link in your tank line. So if we were to put, say, Bruenor up here, Bruenor's health is going to be lower at 1/7 EO5 than his counterparts in the tank line, right? So he is not going to survive as much. He is going to get hit and he is going to fall over. And when he does, there goes your whole formation, right? So you want to try to make sure that you're using multiple tanks in your front line, and that, and recognize that if one tank has less health than another, that tank may very well, depending on what other survivability features they have, they may be the first one to fall over. Like Briv, 274 EO5. Nayeli has more health than he does, and so does Turial. Oh, no, Turial's coming in a little less. 2, really? All right. Yeah, so Turial and Briv coming in less than Nayeli. Why? Well, because Briv and Turial have other survivability features, right? They both have damage reduction, and they both have some kind of survival ability. Like Briv has the healing, Turial has the shielding. These can help. That can help push them further and keep them alive longer than Nayeli, because Nayeli's just got that health pool to work with. Nayeli's just got that health pool to work with. So hold on, let me throw some familiars out here, level some things up. We can push past this level. Should do all the damages. All the damages. I don't know. We're just firing them all off. See what happens. So make sure that when you have a multi-tank front line, I don't care. Make sure when you have a multi-tank front line that you are using multiple tanks, if at all possible. There may be scenarios where you just don't have enough. In that case, you can put a non-tank in your front line. Like, say you only have Turial and Nayeli, and it's a 3-tank front line. Well, who do you put up front? Whoever provides your lowest group buff, and they can do it, from the front line, basically, because they're gonna die. You're gonna use that group buff for as long as you can. Then they're gonna fall over and go boom. And sometimes that's okay. Sometimes that's just enough. That's enough to get you through the level and to meet your goal on a variant. It's just not going to let you push super deep if you're trying to farm favor there, right? So that's not ideal. That's why when we're looking at, a lot of people are like, well, what's the good formation to push deep to get favor in an event? A lot of times that's based off how many tanks are in the front line. Having a one tank front line is great if you have super durable tanks that can survive just about anything. However, if you don't, because they're taking all the damage, however, if you don't, sometimes having a multi-tank front line is better because those enemies on the screen, like I said, if you were to make it to the cap of 100, that means each tank's only going to be tanking 33 roughly, right? One's going to have 34 on average. I mean, RNG is going to make it someone get a lot more than the others, but the point is you've divided up the damage amongst multiple champions, and that can be easier for them to survive against because they're not taking as much overwhelm damage, and also easier for you to prevent in terms of, say, shields or heals. So sometimes you can push deeper in multi-tank formations if your tanks aren't super durable, but otherwise you might want to go for a single tank formation. And then there's this one, and that's just so difficult. They just got to make it difficult. So you want to keep that in mind when you're building out your formation. There are exceptions to tanking. There's exceptions to everything in this game. Generally, when we talk about, well, this is the rule. The general rule of thumb is X, right? There's always exception Y and Z, and there can be numerous exceptions, but that doesn't mean that there isn't a general rule. So the general rule is you tank with someone that has tanking as their role. The general rule that you want to look at. But there are champions that kind of just ignore those rules. Let's talk about... No, wait. Why do I always... there he is, Artemis. Artemis Entreri is not a tank. He's a DPS. He's squishy. He's got 5 overwhelm. Why would you ever want to tank with Artemis Entreri? Well, so he has some interesting features that are based off his abilities. He has an observance ability that allows him to copy positional formation abilities applied to other DPS champions in the formation, and then he gains a copy of those abilities on himself at a % of their effectiveness, and this is obviously greater than 100%. This allows you to do some shenaniganry by mixing up some formations and doing some things that maybe you wouldn't normally do. So let's say we put Calliope in here. Calliope provides healing, or provides temp HP shields, like Celeste provides healing. I'm actually going to move. I'm going to move some people around here. Yeah, this is fine. This is fine. It's fine. This is fine. Now, look, all of a sudden, we're not going to see the shields immediately, but all of a sudden, the healing that Celeste was doing, 3826, now becomes an E4 number, so 15,000, because Artemis is observing these heals off of Ashara and multiplying them and allowing himself to take more. I didn't want Calliope. What am I thinking? We're going to talk about somebody else. Allowing him to take more damage or heal more damage. He can't take more damage if he doesn't have, if he actually doesn't have a health, which right now he only has 135. We're going to throw a couple different champions in the mix here. For now, who am I going to put back out there? Let's put Brit back out here. Okay. So now, in a multi-tank front line, Artemis now has lots of health. You notice a 349 EO4. He's getting maximum heals, like an outrageous amount of heals, and he can pull this kind of situation off for as long as he wants, as long as he can stay alive. But heals aren't the only thing he can multiply. He can also multiply shields. So I had Calliope in. Calliope wasn't going to help us look at that super well. But this will. I'm just going to move some things around here. When we look at a character that applies a shield like Gaarawarr applies a shield to another DPS, and then Artemis observes that shield. So on the DPS, we only have like an 1100 shield, right? Artemis observes it, and now we're over 5,000. So you can play some shenaniganry with champions like Artemis. The other one here is Arkon. Usually using them both together is what gets you the major shenanigans. The reason is because Arkon is one of those weird exceptions. He is a DPS and a tank. So he's what I call a selfish tank. He doesn't tank and help out the party. He tanks and helps out himself. So you don't usually put him in a tanking position unless he's actually going to be doing damage. Because if he's not actually going to be doing damage, then he's just a big bag of health taking hits for you, and that's not necessarily ideal. So by doing some shenaniganry, as we can see, I've just maximized numbers even more. Now we're getting even more heals and even more shields, because Arkon also has an ability like Artemis, where he usurps, he steals abilities and bonuses from champions that are getting him that aren't like him. You can manipulate things. This isn't the greatest demonstration of this. I've actually did a Gaarawarr's Guide to Advanced Formation Strategy, which is literally talking about Artemis and Arkon almost the entire time. You can check that out. We do lots of shenaniganry there. Just know that you can actually multiply bonuses for champions like Artemis. You can give him lots of health. You can give him lots of shields. You can give him incredible heals, and he can exist if necessary in a front line because of this. Arkon can get tanky and do some shenaniganry in the front line, but you have to build your entire formation around doing this kind of stuff. So it's not like most other tanks are kind of hot swap. You put them in the tanking line, and as long as their buffs are reaching your DPS, you're good. But so you don't build the formation around them. You choose them to fit the formation. But with Arkon and Artemis, you have to build the formation around them. The other exception is already out here, Barrowin. Barrowin started out at like a 10 overwhelm. She's a healing support though. So again, Barrowin is one of those bruiser type characters like Brunor, but even more so because she heals everyone in her column and any tanks in the column ahead of her with her Shield of Faith. After she attacks, the next healing word grants temporary HP, so she creates shields. When she gets up here high enough, she gets Divine Aid. It increases her own max health by 50% of the champion with the most health out of the champions in the same column as her, and increases her overwhelm point by 15, so she can get up to 25. And if we come over here, we've got Defensive Duelist. Well, that's why she's up to 25. We've got Defensive Duelist, adding more. You've got all kinds of other effects that can feature. It gets a little wild. You can do some shenaniganry here because this is where we get into all of these exceptions to the rules. Narak likes to buff people who have high wisdom. And if you put them next to someone, suddenly Barrowin's Overwhelm is now 41. Her shields are going to be even bigger. Her healing is going to be even bigger because the Overwhelm and the health that she gains is a function of this positional formation ability that Narak buffs, right? This is where we get into shenaniganry, what I just referred to in general as shenaniganry. Things that are wild edge cases of using abilities and buffing them in different ways. It's what creates a tank Barrowin. It's what creates a tank Artemis. It's how you can get some crazy heals and shields out of situational abilities. This is kind of what I'm trying to highlight here, is you want to make sure when you're looking at your champions and when you get a champion for the first time that you're reading through their abilities, either as you upgrade them or by going to a guide like mine, or I have a guide for every champion, or going to, other fan sites that list out the champions and their abilities, and read through so that you understand how they function. Because if you understand how they function, then you're going to have a better idea how they interact with each other to create odd situations like this, right? There's lots of little tidbits, like Freely has the ability, I'm not going to be able to get to it here, Freely has the ability to increase someone's overwhelm point. if he's within two adjacencies of them, and if they're under attack. So it basically makes them more durable in a fight. I don't normally build formations around that, but when you get into this situation with someone like Artemis and Arkon, where they can observe or usurp or that, etc. The overwhelm, you can get overwhelm above 100, which means you're basically never taking that bonus damage from enemies. Again, it's not necessarily ideal, because what are these? Even if we have Artemis with a ton of health and overwhelm, and Barrowin with a ton of health and overwhelm, or a ton of health, overwhelm, and the shields, right? They've all got these shields and heals, and we're doing all this stuff that would make them tanky. Are they still your best choice as a tank? No. They're a choice you can make if that's all you've been given. That's why you want to understand some of this. Is they are a choice if you're in a variant that restricts you, and they're all you have available. If you don't have any tanks, but you've got Artemis, you might have a tank. Can you build that out? You have Barrowin, you might have a tank. Can you make that happen? You need to be aware of those type of situations, and that you can do that. But because they don't have those ramping bonuses that we talked about that help to upgrade your party and make your party do more damage, all they're doing in the front line is just surviving. And your damage is what it is. If you couldn't kill them off before they hit your front line, you're not going to do it. You're probably not going to do it after, because you're not getting any ramping bonuses off the number of enemies hitting your tanks, because those characters don't have those bonuses because they're not tanks. You've just made them super tanky. So keep in mind those exceptions. There is one more exception that I want to talk about. It's kind of the anti-tank, and that is Turial. Turial, I'm going to level Turial up a lot because I want you to kind of understand what we're getting into with Turial. We can take him all the way. There we go. All right. Turial, I've leveled them up super far. They are a support. They are not a tank. They are Overwhelm 5. Super squishy. They don't get... We've gone through all their abilities. They don't get any more Overwhelm. If we take out all the other champions here, not only do they not get any Overwhelm, they don't get any health. 62 health. But come over here. No tanking feats. But they exist as a tank in this game. They are an anti-tank, as I like to call it, because what happens is they have an ability where if they are in the front line, where are we at? Orders demand. When an enemy attempts to attack Turial, they instead attack a different valid target if one is available. So they basically go, nope, go see that guy. This is the I am not the tank you are looking for character. Oh no, this is going to go bad. So if we actually get up here, if we can get some of these creatures to live long enough to get up to the tank, which it may not happen, we will see that they just walk right by. They just walk right by. They have no interest in Turial. Yeah, I like that, Monster Mangler. Yeah, your tank is in another castle. Yeah, they're always going to avoid Turial. They're never going to hit him. This is key. This is key. If you do not have, say you have a durable tank, super durable tank, like Ayla or Turial or Briv, like these are kind of the kind of high end, more durable tanks, and you have a 2-tank front line, but you'd rather it just be a 1-tank front line. You can make it with Turial. You can make that with Turial. And every time he does that little, nope, go over there, when this occurs, Turial increases the effective embodiment of the law by a percent, and it stacks up to a bunch of times. Basically, and if it's fiends, it's even bigger. This is their version of ramping bonuses. So the more enemies they're deflecting onto tanks, the better. Now, keep in mind, they basically make the front line of your formation a -1 tanking slots. So they take a 3-slot three front line formation and they make it 2 tanks. They take a 2-slot formation and they make it 1 tank. this keeps going. They take a 1-slot formation. They make it 0 tanks. So how do you make it 0 tanks, Gaarawarr? Well, again, he can only deflect if there's another tank there to deflect to. So if you just put him in the front of a single tank formation, then you have no tank. That's kind of the whole point of this video today, this tutorial today, is you need a tank in your front line. He will -1 your tank line, but that means you will have 0 tanks if he is the only one there. So make sure you have at least one other person to exist in that front line with him, and he will give them all the enemies. So keep that in mind. Again, generally speaking, you want your tank to have this tanking role. So click on the champ UI, click on them, open the champ UI, look up here. Do they have the tanking role? Yes. Okay, then they can go on my front line. General rule of thumb. All right. And having a nice overwhelm is good. Again, this is one of the more fiddly parts. I actually don't feel like overwhelm feels a little underwhelming due to self shields and in some cases the amounts of heals that can come out of Briv. But that, who knows? That could get balanced past in the future. But ultimately, self-healing is great on Briv. That's what makes him one of the top tanks in the game. I mean, definitely top 3 tank in the game. The self-shields are what make Turial and Ayla up there, really high up there. Ayla's actually, I rate Ayla better. You've heard it before. I rate Ayla as the #1 tank in the game. That's because her shield isn't based off... is based just off an inherent ability that refreshes itself every 15 seconds, 10 to 15 seconds. Whereas Turial has to use his ultimate to pop that shield, and his shield fades over time. So until you get his ultimate cooldown item capped, his shield can wear off before you can get the shield up again. So that's kind of a heavy investment to make him a super strong survivable tank, whereas Ayla just exists that way, right? The other tanks are going to have health items usually. Like we've got a health item over here on Briv. No, that's steel. There we go. Owlbear Steak. Whereas, other champions aren't. Like, obviously, Turial just has buffs. No health items. So you're usually looking for health items. You're looking for health feats. You're looking for overwhelm feats if you decide to fiddle with that. Yeah, that's what you want out of your tank champions. So just throwing anybody up there. I mean, you can throw. We had Calliope earlier. You can throw Calliope in. We can demonstrate this actually. Kill everything. You throw Calliope in. Calliope will shield anyone that comes under attack or takes damage of some sort. Will automatically proc a shield on them. We're just not going to get that far. They're killing everything too easily. All right. Calliope makes for a good tag team partner. All right, we're going to take some damage here, and then they're going to get some shields. Okay, so it's a percentage of the shield. It's a percent shield. There we go. Now we see it pop up. It's based off a percentage of their health. It caps out at 200% of their health. So the shield's actually more effective the more health you have in your party. Right now we don't have any health, so it's not super effective. But ultimately, no matter what, it's going to cap out at 200% of your health. So right here, 135. So we've got a pretty solid shield. But it's still small compared to actually having someone in there who's going to have some health and some health share. Yeah, there we go. So the shield's going to be far more effective on say, Arkon than it is anyone else. We would move back to here, and we would pop up here, and then Arkon could usurp it and make it even bigger. But the point is, shields are nice. Shields are good. Get shields if you can. And that's probably going to wrap up most of the general information on tanks. Again, if you'd like to read through this in a more potentially more concise format, I talk a lot. You can hit up the subreddit. I did just post this today. It's probably just on the front page of the subreddit, but otherwise it's in it's on the wiki resource page on the subreddit for my stuff that I just linked in chat. Yeah. So we are going to take a short break. We'll come back. I already see lots of questions that Jay has pulled into my document over here. We're going to go over all of those. When I come back right now, we will take a short musical interlude. I think we only have songs for 2 tanks in the game. And I got them both queued up here. So this one's going to be for Briv. Steel Mirror. I'll be right back, everybody. Okay, apparently I queued up the wrong one. This is going to be for Lizaps, everybody. Oh, it's Saturday, folks.
Here we go. I can't feel anything and I will never stop. My creations take me where I want to go. I'll make it to the summit from the depths below. You want something from this world, you have to take it. Or just make it. Give me steel, give me fire, watch what I create. Make it real, come and smile, let me my escape. My machines, and my dreams, and reality. It's my destiny, the elephants of my fate. My power armor's growing stronger every day. Determination, perseverance carved the way. Don't
Oh, that was the wrong button. Saturdays, folks. Some go better than others. And yes, as we were talking about in chat, Celise has a song. Briv has a song, which we'll listen to at the end. Lazaps has a song we just heard, Artificer of My Own Fate. And Havilar technically sort of has a song. She gets half of a song. Brimstone Angels Go 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 is about both Havilar and Farida. The first stanza is from Farida's perspective. The second is from, or the first section is from Farida's perspective. The second is from Havilar's, and you can tell by the way they refer to the Warlock when they're talking about him, or the Cambion when they're talking about him. Okay, we probably don't need. Let's just put a bunch of tanks in. Let's just put a bunch of tanks in. Do we have tanks everywhere now? No, we don't. We don't yet. Okay, Grelma can be a tank. We'll actually put her in Circle of the Mountain just because. Hey, Sentry's a tank. Yeah, you'll pick up, as you'll see here, you'll pick up lots of tank options as you go along. It's just that when you start, you don't necessarily have a bunch of options, but eventually you'll have tanky champions all over the place. Walnut's an interesting one. Some of her features change based off what form she's in, so whether she's under attack or not. Here's Lazaps. Yeah, we just heard about Lazaps. Yay. Slot 10 is tank heavy. We got Turial, we got Wolfgar, we got Havilar, and then tank adjacent you've got Barrowin. So there's lots of tank options here. Lots of tank options here. We'll just put him back in. And Dragonbait. Dragonbait may get left out of Griddle Champion streams, but he doesn't get left out of my streams. Haha. Alright. So there's lots of tank champions, and you can run in all tank formation, as you're seeing here. Yeah. Yeah, we don't have anybody in slot 2, really? Yeah. And we're doing an anti-take action with slot 1. Alright, so let me dive into questions. Dragonbait, never heard of them. Yeah. Let me find things that are on the topic of tanks, and then we'll come back and we'll hit everything else. Jason Nolte, do you think there's a place for tanks without health share in the game? When Celise came out, she didn't have it. I didn't think it was an issue. Sometimes use Naeli in her non-share spec, especially in levels where everyone takes a % of health damage, which can quickly overwhelm healing when health numbers get high. I feel like health share is a tool that should be on every tank. Specifically in that case where you're talking about adventures where like in a variant where you take a % health damage every second. The workaround for those isn't necessarily to have a tank that doesn't have health share. The workaround is usually to not use many tanks at all and to only level them up when they need the health to survive. So you don't just smash all the levels into them. You kind of limit yourself to how you level them up, and you use shields. Temp HP shields are fantastic for situations like that. So having Calliope in your formation, or Korth to a much lesser extent, his shields aren't as great. Shaka has some shields, but again, not as great as Calliope. Calliope is kind of the best support shielder in the game. So a combination of not leveling up your hopefully solo tank champion and having Calliope in her lore spec providing shields all the time, like every 10 seconds, is usually how you would address that. I feel like when you, and this is my you asked a question, I'm gonna give you my subjective opinion. I feel like not having health share limits your functionality. If you didn't have health share, you better have something else. Like I feel like Briv could have gotten away. Briv could have gotten away without having health share. Briv has way too many things, folks. Briv has way too many goodies. He could have gotten away from having health share because he has group-wide healing. So you would still want to pair him with another tank that does have health share, so that the people in your party have enough health to live through stuff, but then he could heal them. That could have been a situation, but I feel like you just kind of want that health share. I feel like that was kind of, I didn't notice right away, and then when it was pointed out, I was like, oh, that, now I don't really want to use her as much, and then they fixed it, but yeah. Let's see what else. Everybody's like off the topic of tanks. Well, no, we'll get there. We'll get there. Who's a better tank, Turial or Naeli? It depends. It depends on how much favor you have, and your items, right? Like I was just talking about Turial kind of, his Super Saiyan mode doesn't kick in until you've capped out the cooldown reduction for his ultimate. And also, like, what kind of health item do you have? How many item levels does it have? Right, like it's gonna depend. Turial is much further up. He's slot 10, so you can't even use him as a tank early on. You have to use Naeli. So you have to get enough gold to even get him into the formation, and then you've got to get him into his wild shape form, and then you've got to get some extra health on him. So it really depends on where you are in your power curve. Whenever you're trying to compare two champions in the game, regardless of what role they are, you just want to get to kind of a place where you're walling out, where where you can't push any further, and then start swapping them in and out and see which one works better. It's the best way to figure out which one's going to work for you. Just get to your wall and start experimenting. Perceptor Teeth. Can you describe some scenarios where tanks don't need to be in the front line? Ooh, yeah, I love exceptions. The biggest exception to the tank in the front line rule, as in terms of truly not needing tanks at all in the front line, is Asoriel's Resolve. So Asoriel's Resolve is one of what I consider a milestone variance in the game. This is where you unlock Dragon Bait. It's in Tomb of Annihilation. You fight a boss called Valindra, who AoEs you, who stands, his fixed position, stands in the back, and AoEs your entire party. She does not do single target attacks. So in this situation, yes, there are an endless stream of trash mobs, what I call trash mobs, the little enemies you see coming out, that come out to try to get to your formation. But in this specific variant, what you're usually doing is using a Fire Breath potion with a familiar on the field to instantly kill those before they can even get past Valindra, so that all of your damage is going on Valindra. Well, because you're not tanking Valindra, because she's not hitting your front line, your tanks don't need to be in the front line. Now, depending on what tank you're using, they may need to be in front of your DPS, which may effectively put them in the front line. That doesn't mean they have to be there. So if you have tanks that just need to be within a couple spaces of a couple adjacencies of your DPS, you can use them. So, for instance, Tyrell's Wild Inspiration increases the damage of champions within 2 slots. Not 2 columns behind, just within 2 slots. So that's a big deal, right? And Forces of Good increases the damage of good champions. Just good champions in the entire party, not even within a couple slots. So Turial is a good one that you can use in that kind of scenario. They don't have to be in front. Some champions are going to want you to be in front. I don't think Briv is one, though. Hold on. No, it just increases everybody's damage, right? Oh, behind him. Yeah, Netherese Steel. Damage of all champions behind him. So he doesn't have to necessarily be in the front column, but the DPS does have to be behind him. But yeah, not everybody's like that. So in some cases, you can have these champions. They can provide the health share that you need to stay alive, because again, Valindra's AoEing your entire party. That is a case of where you need multiple tanks with health share. So having tanks with lots of health, putting their health items in, they don't need to overwhelm in that scenario. They just need lots of health. So you stack lots of health and they share it to everybody else. And you survive based off that, but they don't have to be in the front line. That's actually how I got through Strahd's version of Asoriel's Resolve, because in that version you don't get what I consider to be the core champion for that fight, which is Calliope, because temp HP shields allow you to take more than your health and damage from Valendra. So multiple tanks plus Calliope is usually the key to that. But you don't get Calliope in Strahd's version, so you have to put your tanks in certain positions and you use Narak shenanigans with Githzerai Focus, because, hey, guess what, folks? That health share that tanks give, positional formation ability. Positional formation ability that Narak can give a bonus on. So he can make you even tankier. So yeah, that's one of the keys to, hey, you don't need a tank. That's a situation where you don't need a tank in the front line, but you need a tank somewhere, right? So any kind of situation where you run into like that, where you're really just the whole party's taking damage, but not necessarily your front line. Or here's another milestone one: Rhea Reborn, unlocking Rhea, the Evergreen champion. You get to a certain point towards the end of that where if an enemy hits your front line, it disables your tanks and all of their abilities. So in that situation, you don't even need tanks in your front line. In that situation, you don't need tanks really. You might need a little health share, but generally you just need lots of damage to kill them all before they get there. So in that situation, you might run a formation that's just a DPS and all kinds of support champions. That may work out for you. I know some people have done that to success. Does Bruenor get increased overwhelm points from somewhere? Well, just from that one feat. Just from that one feat. Or if you had Freely in with Bruenor, right? Because like I said, Freely has an ability. Well, where's Freely again? Hey, Freely. He's in a slot that doesn't have a tank in it. Where's it at? Cutting Words increases the overwhelm point by 5 of tanking champions that are under attack and within 3 slots of Freely. Now again, it says 5, so you could increase regular tanks by 5. Artemis and Arkon, again, can observe this at a multiplied percent, and it ends up being, giving them over 100 overwhelm. It's pretty ridiculous. Anything specific for tanks? Hold on. Came in late. Not familiar with the unicorn. Is that new? That's Turial. This is the Celestial Turial skin. So Celestial Turial is a unicorn. Icewind Dale Turial is a moose. The moose is loose. Icewind Dale Turial is a moose. Champion Turial is just a bear, the normal bear with green cool stuff on it. And regular Turial, regular bear. But Celestial is a unicorn. Turialcorn. Do you have a list of good tank buffers? It seems in my roster my tanks buff the party more than the other way around. Well, I mean, that's, like I said, a good tank is going to have ramping buffs. Arkon doesn't have any, so, he's selfish. Everyone else should have some kind of ramping buff. Now, how you want to rate that, it's going to just kind of differ. Ultimately, I feel like with tanks, it's more about who do you have available in the mission that you're doing, if it's a variant. Otherwise, you're looking at just durability, because those ramping buffs, the longer you can stay alive, the more multipliers you're getting for that ramping buff, and that can be super nice. But no, I don't have I haven't done, tier lists. I don't really do tier lists. Tried it once. Any tier list that you see with my name on it is way out of date and may not be accurate at all, and won't be updated ever. So yeah, I mean, there's probably people out there that have some kind of list for how they want to rank it, but ultimately it's because it's so subjective. Like, what kind of gear do you have? What item levels? What feats have you unlocked? Like I said, the best thing is just to get to a wall and start testing them out and see which one's going to get you further. Did I miss the Arkon discussion? I mean, sort of. I basically just said usurp, and he's a selfish tank. He can usurp to increase his own survivability by increasing the heals and shields that are coming into him, and he can usurp cutting words from freely. But if you want more on Arkon, I suggest you hit up Gaarawarr's Guide to Advanced Formation Strategy on the YouTube, on the Cena YouTube, because that's going to talk more in depth about him. Speaking of tanks, does Gromma's Stone Skin affect ranged magic breath attacks? Draco and Duperator. So Gromma is this is another one of those champions that's kind of an exception to rules. She can be a DPS, a tank, or a support. Not necessarily all three at the same time. So right now I put her in her mountain spec. She gets a hardened shell, which decreases the effect of overwhelm by 25%. But she gets all of her health, regardless, even if she's in her DPS spec, she gets all of her health upgrades. And she gets her overwhelm, which is interesting. But Circle of the Mountain, which is her specialization for defense, she gets Stone Skin and takes half damage from all ranged attacks. It says ranged. It doesn't say ranged and or magical, and normally the game calls that out. So I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, because usually, like with Rosie, her deflect missile specifically calls out ranged and magical attacks. So I'm going to say it's just ranged. They're just referring to ranged attacks. But yeah, so Gromma gets different stuff in her. She's kind of a throwback champion where she's completely different in terms of functionality and in terms of upgrades, depending on what spec you choose. Nayeli is like that still. So there are a couple older champions that kind of have that have just never been changed from that kind of format. The current style of champion design is more that instead of completely changing how a champion works with a specialization, you create options to use to tailor to your situation. And you're not necessarily changing anything else about the champion. You're just giving a bonus or slightly changing the functionality of a certain feature of that champion to make them more ideal for a given scenario. I like that overall, but because otherwise it's like you've got to remember all the different upgrade paths, and it just causes some problems when it's the other way. What else we got? What happens when Turial is the only one on the front line? He dies. With bosses that have AoE, will Turial deflect those attacks as well? No, AoE hits the entire party. Turial just moves people over so that anything that would try to attack him directly, like in terms of walking up and smacking him in the face, then goes to somebody else. I think they smack somebody else in the face. Perceptor Teeth, is Tyrol pronounced Turial or Tyrol? I think it's Tyrol. It's either Tyrol or Tyrol, but I think it's just Tyrol Tall Guy. I'd have to go back and watch the Force Grey episodes again. This is the Tyrol and the rest of Force Grey are based off the Force Grey stream, so you can go back and actually hear the champions' names get said. I say Tyrol. Unless you're talking about Turial. Turial and Tyrol get confused. So this is Turial. Turial. This is Tyrol. Right? So two different champions. Similar names. Tofu Fox. How do you judge when adding healing is useful versus needing a more robust tank? And around when is non-Briv healing outclassed? There's a lot going on here. So, I mean, it feels straightforward. I mean, when adding healing is useful is when you are looking at the damage you're taking. If it's like smaller amounts of damage, but it's over time, like these variants where you're taking damage consistently, that might be a thing. If it's smaller bursts of damage, or if you're If you've got tanks that, maybe don't take a lot of damage, maybe they got some damage reduction going on, and they just need to be topped off a little bit every now and then healing is going to be effective. But you don't usually want a scenario where you're swapping in more and more healers just to try to keep your tank line alive, because you're most likely losing your damage bonuses to do that. And the whole point of staying alive is to just stay alive long enough that you get enough damage to kill whatever's in front of you. If you can't do that, adding all the healing in the world, that you may be able to keep your tank line alive, but if you can't kill anyone, then what was the point? Then you're not even falling back to a level where you actually can farm gold. You're just sitting there and nothing's happening, which is kind of what they took the game against. So generally speaking, I prefer robust champions to healing. And when I do have a healer in, I'm targeting healers that are going to, give me solid bonuses, either buffs or debuffs. And their healing to me is a bit secondary. But it just depends. Like, there are always going to be variants where you are going to need healing, like the fight against Valindra. We keep coming back to this because Valindra is probably one of my favorite fights in the game. I think it's probably kind of the best designed boss fight so far in terms of you as a player needing to understand a lot of aspects of this game to complete it. You need to know how to build a formation that does damage. You need to know how to build a formation that's survivable. And you need to know how to, how to rate, like when do you burst? When do you fire off ultimates? When can you rotate ultimates? Like, there's a lot of stuff going on there. It's easier to kind of AFK through now. But when it first came out, and still today in some of its variant forms, it is an incredibly challenging event, or variant that you need to understand these concepts on. And in that case, you need a combination of survivability, durability, but for your whole party. And you need healing, but you also need damage prevention in the form of shields, right? Because Valindra's going to hit you with enough damage to burst through those shields. And then you need to top off whatever health was taken away from you while waiting for Calliope then to reapply shields, right? It just kind of depends. You kind of have to watch what's going on. Are you taking more damage in a hit than your tank can handle? He needs to be more robust. She needs to have more health. They need more health. Are you just getting whittled down slowly by enemies? Heals might solve that problem. Is it a scenario where your healing is almost keeping up, but not quite? Some shields might help, right? Like I said, Briv kind of has all the things in one, and all the tools in one bag, because he's got damage reduction, so he's not getting hit as hard as another tank would get. He's got a solid amount of health. He's also got his own healing, so as long as he can stay alive for 10 seconds or 10 hits, whichever happens first, he's going to heal for a percentage of his damage. And spoiler alert, if you use his Go with the Flow spec, which I did here, I believe, Go with the Flow, so it increases the healing flow ability by 50%. That brings him up to 75%, because normally it's half the damage that he heals. That brings him up to 75%, and then if you have Mert's Perk Up healing that increases the healing received by tank champions by 50%, that's another 50% on top of that. That takes him over 100% healing, which means that as long as he survives 10 hits or 10 seconds, he heals back to full. So this is what makes Briv one of the best tanks in the game. It's just that he is still, even with that, he is still limited by the amount of health he has. He can still only take 99.99 repeating percent of his health in damage in one hit. And hopefully within 10 hits or 10 seconds, technically, to stay alive, right? Whereas someone with self-shields can take hundreds, Turial and Ayla can get their shields technically up to 1,000% of their health. I feel I'm on record for saying I think that's a little overpowered and probably needs to be looked at, but, you know. 99.99% repeating is equal to 100%. No, it's not. That's not how math works, Andromek. It's not. If he's got, because of the numbers in this game, if you have 1E23 health, you know, 99, if you're basically, you're taking, if we're rounding up, sure. But if we're just saying that it's, basically I'm saying you can take all but one health. You take all but one health point. So 99.99 and repeat it however you need to get him down to one health. As long as he doesn't take that last one health, he can heal up again. Heal up again. Folks, can we not? I feel like people know what I was trying to say. You can take all but one health. Yeah, so we don't need to be pedantic about it in chat. Thanks. Okay, my wife asks, this is a good person asking the questions their wife wants to know. What about Nova? Her buffs seem good and seem to scale past soft cap. Does this make Nova a good option for tank if we invest levels in her? I mean, sure. Just keep in mind, like, those drops are based off, the biggest bonuses are based off killing bosses. And even then you're going to get diminishing returns, right? Like, the amount that you're getting is going to, you can continue to farm, some of those smaller bonuses for large amounts of time, but because of the way things scale as you move forward each level, in terms of like health, of your enemies, you're not going to necessarily be able to keep up with that. You're going to hit a point where it doesn't make sense to keep farming those. So sure, she can contribute to her ramping bonuses, continuously past the soft cap. So can Briv, but this doesn't mean that they can go endlessly and forever, right? They're gonna, because they still, ultimately it's about getting hit, because you're never gonna just, at some point we may get to a point where you have so much damage that you're killing everything before it hits the front line, but then you don't even need tanks, right? You can run support. So using a tank is about getting hit on, and eventually you're going to get hit hard enough that you fall over. It's just going to happen. Right now it's going to happen at 1002, level 1002. The scaling, the way they, like I said before, they changed the scaling for enemies every 50 levels. It's usually like, so 1 to 50 and then 51 to whatever, and then, well, when you get to 1001, it's not horrible, but 1002, it's like it ramps up to 11, and it doesn't scale normally, going from 1001 to 1002. I'm sad that in all tank formation it doesn't have Ayla. I mean, I've got Lazapsin. I mean, we had Ayla out earlier, didn't we? Oh, I had Ayla in yesterday. But yeah, I got Lazapsin. Lazaps is a tank too. Ayla gets enough time in the spotlight. Another question from my wife. Would you give a bit of insight on Gromma as a tank, or how do you recommend we use Gromma? I like Gromma as a support. Like I said, she gets all of her health and her overwhelm no matter what, but usually you don't put Gromma in the front line. You usually want Gromma somewhere else, anywhere else, in her Arctic spec, because the Freezing Breeze does a debuff that is applied on attack, and it's kind of in a small AoE around whatever she attacks. So that gives you a solid debuff on enemies without her needing to get beat on by enemies. So being in Mountain Spec means she has to be hit by enemies to get that debuff, and it needs to be, you need to get hit a significant number of times, and that's not always viable for Gromma. So usually I do Gromma in her support spec. It doesn't mean you can't use Gromma as a tank. You absolutely can. She just doesn't necessarily have the health scale that's super supportive of getting hit that many times. If I have other good tanks, is it better to use Turial as a tank on the front or a support by himself? McNeil DJ, it depends on the scenario. A lot of times I'll use Turial in his Moonbeam spec. and I'll tank with someone else. If it's a single tank formation, I have Ayla in the front, and then I'll have Turial in the back, Moonbeamin. So it just depends. Like, yeah, if you have other tanks and what you need is more of the damage, then Turial and Moonbeam spec becomes the better option for you. Doesn't Arkon have a fire breath which ramps? Sort of. So let's go talk about this. Rage of the Dragonborn. When 6+ enemies are attacking Arkon, his base attack gains a small cleave and does 5 times damage. So this is a fixed amount. When 16+ enemies are attacking, his base attack is a massive flame breath attack that does 25 times damage. It does count enemy and rage stacks as additional attackers, but these are thresholds. So it's not like he continues to get more and more damage the more people are hitting him. It's just if he has 6+ enemies attack, when he gets to 6 enemies, he's doing 5 times his normal damage, and if he gets to 16 enemies, he's doing 25 times his normal damage. But that's it. That's how that works. Everything else, this is his ramping thing, is Rising Anger. Increases the damage of evil champions by 100% for each enemy attacking him and or each enrage stack. So Rising Anger is his ramping ability. Technically, you could use this in a situation where you were using an evil DPS, like Krond. So Krull could help out Krond. But that's really... This is the only ability you would be putting him in for. It would be a situation where you need a tank and you don't have a tank. So the best option is Arkon to tank with an evil DPS. And that's just... Oof, if that's your best option, that's a rough variant. What about Evelyn? Evelyn's fantastic. Evelyn has multiple options for like with her specialization. She can either be you're choosing either am I in a single tank formation or am I in a multi-tank formation, or am I using her as support, like her mom arm spec, as I like to call it, which is her protection spec. She doesn't even have to be in the tank column, but she gets a lot of health. She has probably one of the better UI interfaces for figuring out if her stuff's going off. As you can see, she gets these this sun above her head with these rays. This is mom arm fighting style protection. She gets these sunlight rays above her head, and they're white if they're non-functional, and they're yellow if they are functional, which is pretty fantastic. So you know right away, am I getting all of Evelyn's bonuses or not? And they trigger off a variety of different things. Everything runs into divine prayer. Basically, divine prayer is the sun, and then everything else functions as a conduit into divine prayer. And you just try to trigger all the things to get her maximum rampage. The biggest problem with Evelyn is that she's in the most highly contested formation slot or champion bench slot in the game. This is the best case scenario bench slot. Like, it's the most competitive slot. I wish every slot looked like this, because that would mean all the champions were really competitive, because you've got Ashara, who's top DPS. You've got Krull, who's the king of debuffs. You've got Krond, the I would say best evil DPS in the game. You've got Alindra, who works fantastically in terms of her buffs and stuff especially when she's with her other members of her party. Shandy's one of the best speed champions in the game, also great support. Rhea is super strong support, specifically though for Zariel, because that's her patron. So patron Zariel stuff, Rhea comes in, and then Evelyn, fantastic tank. So you've got a really strong bench slot here, and that's what makes Evelyn not get used a lot, just because she's got so much competition. When you do bring her out, though, she steps up to the plate. So pretty solid. Is Briv the bestest boy for tank and speed? He's the meta, right? If you're looking, Briv is one of the top 2 speed champions in the game. I would say I would actually rank Human as a better speed champion, because Human's effect is always on. As long as you're putting him in the right place in the formation layout, his speed effect is always there. Whereas Briv's uses up stacks. You have to build them, and you can run out of them. But yeah, I mean, speed tank. Yeah, he's the best speed tank because he's one of the top speed champions. In terms of tanking, like I said, he's one of the top tanks. because of the damage reduction combined with his self-healing, makes him hard to kill. So as long as you're not taking more damage in 10 hits or 10 seconds than he has health, you're gonna be able to keep moving forward. And then he pumps that health into the entire rest of the party. He actually is potentially the best healer in the game. One of the best tanks in the game, one of the best speed champions in the game, and the best healer in the game. That's a little bit much for one champion, Sandy. A little bit much. Yeah. All right, let me go back to the top of the list here. 1 second. All right. How to use Beetle Grim in an Azaka farm. I've been just leaving the big guy in to build stacks and then swapping when I do my Azaka farm. Is that correct? So one of the champions, I think it's the shorter one. We can go look. It does give a gold bonus, but only if the enemy has taken damage. And a percent of damage. Let me find that exact thing. I don't use them that much. If you have them available and that's all you have, they can help. But again, you gotta kind of understand the ability and make sure that it's doing that. Right, here we go. Special order. Whenever Beetle damages an enemy that is not at full health, that enemy will drop more gold when it is killed. It doesn't stack. So you gotta have Beetle in. That's the dwarf. You need to. The enemy, whatever mob you're attempting to farm, has to have taken damage. So when you hover over them, their starting health needs to be lower than their max health. Citron's saying the gold fine kicks in after the mob's taken 1% damage. So yeah, so try to get them at least 1% damage. That's considered not max health. If that's the case, then the gold fine's going to apply. If not, then it won't. So that's kind of the qualifier there. Roper Sailor, I was unrelated to tanking, but I was wondering if you had favorite farming spots in Avernus and Icewind Dale. I don't. I'm currently grinding Avernus, and honestly, the current event seems quicker for me gaining favor. Yeah, when that's over, the grind continues. Generally speaking, I just tend to treat regular adventures when a campaign comes out. I just tend to push a regular adventure as far as I can. So as I'm playing through a new campaign, I end up with far more favor than I need, and eventually I only have to do that a few times, and then I've got good favor, and I don't have to worry about it. And then if I feel like I need more, and I'm not, and you know, those deep pushes and an Azaka farm or two isn't getting me much, then it's all about converting events. It's all about converting events into that to get it higher. But I haven't farmed. I've never really farmed Avernus or Icewind Dale specifically, like going in, I need favor. Generally what you're going to want to look for is hop on one of the fan sites and see if there's anything that isn't just full of armored enemies. Most of Avernus has armored enemies, armored bosses somewhere, but you just don't want something that's just absolutely full of them. And if you actually have, it's not going to help you a whole lot, but if you have Burning Skies, you're going to get another 2,000% damage if you're farming in places that have Hellish, like if you're, to push deeper. It's not huge. 2,000% looks like a lot, but it's just, it's it's a few more levels. It may get you some more gold. So Hellish and not a lot of armored stuff. Who do you think is better in slot 2, Dinar or Korth? I prefer B52 Willie. I prefer Dinar. Because Dinar's stuff doesn't require me to attack something that he's marked, per se. Korth, all the bonuses for Korth come from you attacking the enemy he's marked with his mark debuff. So if your DPS doesn't do that, you're not getting any bonuses. Whereas Dinar is like, look, I'm just going to do all this stuff, and if it dies, you can get stuff, but, like more gold if it dies. But the rest of the time, he's just buffing and healing. Should we use multiple tanks in a single tank formations? Biocron. Oh, I should have done this one under the tank thing. I missed it. Yes. Yeah. They recently nerfed Oral in Icewind Dale, and I cried a little bit because I felt that was one of the ways the game was like saying, hey, you out there only using one tank in a single champion frontline. Maybe use more. Maybe use more. Because they don't exist just to tank at the front. They also exist to make your party more durable via health share, right? So in Icewind Dale, you only get, it's a one tank front line, but Oral was hitting your whole party and just wiping them out because you weren't using more tanks with health share. And maybe some shields, temp HP shields. Like that was another one of those lessons on durability is a good thing to have in certain situations. So yeah, sometimes, yeah. I tend to have a Gromma in a lot. Again, because I think her debuff in Arctic Spec is a really solid debuff to have. So she tends to make it in a lot of my formations. So even if I'm in a one tank front line, with say like if I have Ayla in the front, I've probably got Gromma and Turial in, but Turial's in Moonbeam, and Gromma's in Arctic. So I'll have multiple tanking champions in. They just may not be in the front line doing the tanking things, or even in their tanking specs. Hey, Super Steve, I'm stuck on level 400 of Sorial's Resolve. I have plenty of damage with Ashar, and I'm using Human in the middle column to take double armor chunks off. But even adding Celise didn't get me over the hump. What would be another good tank to pick up? It's probably, Super Steve, I'm just going to go on a limb and say it's probably not your tanking. I think I said before, like, I don't know if you have Calliope in, but Calliope's fantastic. Calliope's going to make your party more durable. I know some people like to put Briv in instead, but I would actually rate, or Keelek in as a healer, but I would rate Calliope as far more important in Sorial's Resolve against Valendra than anyone else in her slot. So try that out, because if you've got the damage, then you can afford to swap out some of the support stuff to just try to keep yourself more alive. So you are using Calliope. Yeah, then it's, I don't know. Then just make sure you've got enough gold to soft cap, and you should. If anything, do you have Super Steve? Do you have Dinar? Oh, you weren't using fire breath potions. Oh, that's going to do it. That'll probably do it right there. So yeah, what you do is you just, when you get there, you have one familiar out on the field or more, up to 6. You pop a fire breath potion, and that just instantly kills all the trash mobs that are coming in, and thus all of the hits that you're doing and all of your ultimates are only hitting Valendra. And you just chew right through them like with a chainsaw, especially with Ashara and Human together. But if you're still having trouble with that, I think Dinar. I like Dinar Calliope combo there because Dinar can heal anyone in a formation, and crawl, and Calliope's shielding everybody. So anything that gets through the shields, Dinar tops off, and you have just great survivability. Oh yeah, and if you're using Crawl, you ult at the end, not at the beginning. When they have like 3 to 4, I like 4 respawns left, that should delete. It's either 3 or 4. Is anyone else having problems with the game not transferring over to Epic Shop when trying to buy items today? Oh, I have no idea. That's a support question. I am not support. Famine Dragon got a list of good tank buffers. Oh, I think I answered this one, kind of. Someone else may have asked it again. It seems in my roster, my tanks buff the party more than the other way around. I mean, that's what... You don't really need to buff your tanks. The good tanks are buffing themselves. Calliope's going to provide the best shields for tanks. You get her automatically. Any of the healers should be healing tanks if you're placing them in the right position. So you just have to keep that in mind. Like with Celeste, if you can't put Celeste in the column right behind the tanks, then you can put her 2 columns back. Then you go her life spec, which is her right hand spec, and just so that you can throw that healing on the front line instead of just focusing on damage and hopefully killing everything. So keep in mind, you want to pay attention if you're trying to keep your tanks a little more alive. And they're just getting slowly whittled down, then pay attention to the specific specializations that your support champions that are healing champions have in terms of placement, so you can help keep your tanks alive. Science guy, Gaarawarr is not a support, he's a DPS. No, I'm a tank. Gaarawarr is a tank. Gaarawarr's not a DPS. Yeah, I do community management for a living. That means I am, by definition, a tank. Which champ synergized best with Zorbu? Just about anyone that buffs him. Yeah, Zorbu doesn't really... I feel like Zorbu doesn't really care who's buffing him, as long as they're buffing him. I'm trying to think if there's... Yeah. I mean, we're not in the age of Zorbu anymore. But he's still one of the top DPS in the game. But off the top of my head, I don't think he cares. Yeah. The best support for Zorbu is himself. The fact that he can buff himself with his own support buff. Yeah. Yeah, so anybody that you have that can buff him, he's gonna like. So that at that point it's just whoever has the biggest buffs. Zorbu likes big buffs, and he cannot lie. I have Beetle and Grim. They meet almost all the variant requirements. Is there a tank like that? Ooh, I don't know. I've never tried to figure out. There's over... Well, let's go take a look here. How many variants? Patron variant, 190. There's over 190, because I think there... Well, at least 190 variants in the game. And that's not counting events. I can't track that information. I don't know. I don't know if there's tanks that are that work for all of those. I mean, generally with variants, it's less about finding people that work in all of them and just understanding which champions you have available that are going to work well together in that variant, right? Because this game isn't about finding a formation that works everywhere. It's about taking the champions you have available, putting them, kind of solving this puzzle of where to place them in a formation in this variant with these restrictions, and completing the variant. So I would recommend spending more energy on just understanding how all the different champions work than trying to find some that are going to work everywhere. What's better, 480% gold find or 1600% damage? Flux point. That depends on the scenario. If you're not hitting soft cap, which you just saw me hit on. Here, I think everybody can get there now. Yeah. If you're not hitting soft cap, so the point where you can't buy any more upgrades on your champions, then the 480% gold find is going to be better, because that's going to give you more gold. That's going to give you more power over time, and it'll let you hopefully get a lot more upgrades that it will total more than 1600%. If you can soft cap, then you want the damage. Because you don't need the gold at that point. So yeah, if you're playing with your Modron cores, maybe save a... So you can say, oh, does everybody know this? So in your Modron cores, you can save layouts. So you can save, this is my full on, this is just my speed layout. All I care here is about speed and gold find. But if I saved a different one, this is, see, just go fast. If I saved like one that was named all the things that fully epicked out everything, I could swap. So in your situation, you could save one that's gotta get gold, gotta get gold, and then one that's like all the power, and it's just power stuff, and you could just get gold until you soft cap, and then you could swap your layout to the power one. I mean, that seems good, right? What is a speed champion? A speed champion is any champion that has some kind of an effect, an ability effect that that makes you progress faster through the game. That is, and we're not talking damage. We're not talking damage. Everybody's got damage. Everybody can do damage, and we're not talking multiple hits. We're talking some kind of an effect. So, like, say, Briv just literally skips levels. If you've seen him jumping, he's jumping over a level or two at a time. Depends on how high you have his stuff. Human gives you double credit for quests. So if you've got to kill 25 things, you only have to kill. If he gives you double credit, you only have to kill 13. but those credit numbers go up. Sentry reduces the number of things you have to kill. So normally you'd have to kill 25, but you max it out, you only have to kill 17, right? So these kinds of things are speed effects, and speed champions have them. That's what makes them a speed champion. It's not an actual role, it's just kind of a community-given role. If I purchase a weekend chest and get the Herald's According for Kira, but I don't have the champion yet, does the item go into storage? Yes. 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 And that's true with, like, you can then open named Orkira chests. Any chest that is named for a champion, even if you don't have that champion yet, you can open those named chests, and their gear will be stored for you for when you unlock them. However, something like this weekend chest, which is for all 5 champions, if you open it, it's only going to give you gear for the champions you have right now. So you could buy the weekend promotion, you can get Orkira's item, and then you could just maybe, if you want, you can open the chest right away, or you could hold on to them until you have more of these champions, and thus get gear for them. That's what I would recommend, but you got to be patient for that, right? Which of the Evelyn specs do you use multi-tank formation with her in the front line? The mom arm spec, so protection, usually. Basically, the mom arm spec, the protection spec, means that she gets her bonuses if someone else near her is getting hit, like someone else in the party is getting hit. So it's great for multi-take front lines. It's great for her as a support, and it's great for situations where the whole team is getting AoE'd. Otherwise, her other spec, she only procs that bonus if she's getting attacked. So in a 2-tank front line, you could go either way, but in a 3-tank front line, you want mom arm. And in an AoE situation, you want mom arm. We only got a couple minutes left. Let me do one more question, because then we got to get out of here. We got another song to listen to. I've seen questions about basically the third variants. I'm gonna bulk multiple questions, combine multiple questions here. The third variants for champions, especially in this event, are super hard for some people because of the restrictions that apply. First off, if you head back last weekend, we did Gaarawarr's Guide to Dragon Down Year 4. You go watch that for more information. But generally speaking, my answer to you, if you are having a hard time with the third variant, first off is how much favor do you have? Because you're going to need a lot. You're going to need a lot. At least E10, maybe up to and including or surpassing E20. To beat these if you don't have a lot of choices to put in your formation. The second piece of advice I'm going to give to you in this regard is don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's just one variant. If you don't get it, it's not a big deal. You don't have to get it. If you can't do it right now, it's fine. Don't force yourself. Don't force yourself to do it. So regardless of in terms of those third variants, that's the thing. Never, you're going to need lots of favor to make up for whatever champs are missing. And in the end, it's not a big deal if you miss one. You're going to get that variant again the next time you do a time gate, or if you wait till next year. And I know some people are like, next year, but yes, next year. This is a long-term game, folks. All right, we're going to head out. Thanks for hanging out with me today. If I didn't answer your question, you can hit it up maybe someone in chat answered. Otherwise, hit up the Discord. Otherwise, have a great weekend. I will see you back next week. I think Tuesday we return with more streams on the channel. One day we'll have Monday streams again. Today's not that day because today's Saturday. Have a good weekend, everybody. Bye.
Magic metal in his bones, skin harder than the stone. Travels through the plains with his dusty blade. That's your swords against his high. If the bow will hold the line, he's always there to render aid. Majesty betwixt the stars, he takes his grip into the sky, yeah. Catch a metal sound of thunder, snatch his foes asunder. He's still never, yeah. How's that feeling? He's still never, yeah. He aims to misbehave, but being Reach for a man of steel, march from the darkness toward the light. Full of vigor, full of pride, break the bash won't be the night.